It has a sermon, if you can say it as a sermon or a lecture from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then a story. And then another lecture, and then a story. And then a story, and then a lecture. So you kind of put things in a structured way to convey a very particular message. So here I put a table so that we can see easily the 4 stories with the trials, what it attacks, and what is the divine cure. Later we will be going through each surah and be looking deeper into and how to synthesize these 4 stories. Actually, there are even another story to mention, but normally not being mentioned as a pillar story, which is in the middle of the surah. Allah will remind us again about the story of Adam and Iblis, because that is the story of the beginning of everything. The entire journey that we are going through on earth started with that conversation that Allah began the Quran with, telling us what happened between Adam alayhi salam and Iblis. And then these are the 4 trials that Iblis will be working so hard, 24/7 with all his troops, shayateens and everything, to ensure we fall in these 4 trials. The trial of faith, which is covered by the story of Surah Al-Kahf, the one we discussed yesterday. It attacks about identity and also where the heart is. And the divine cure in that particular story was withdrawal and mercy. And yesterday, after we ended the session, someone asked that, does that mean that we see any injustices, so we go withdraw ourselves and we don't say anything? No, that is not the conclusion of the story. The story was telling us when the situation, you have done everything you can and there is no way that you can keep going, then you withdraw. For example, the surah will later contrast with the story of Dhul Qarnayn, whereby this story is about someone who has no willpower there is no excess of resources and power to fight injustices, so they have to withdraw. While Dhul Qarnayn will have everything in terms of power, and he will implement all the changes that he wants to do. And later we can see all these stories actually correspondent among each other. There is a similar theme between them that we can contrast among each other. So the second story is 2 gardens, the owner of 2 gardens. It's about wealth, what it attacks, gratitude and perspective about success, how we measure and how we regard Allah's blessings and love in this life. And the cure, divine cure, was zuhud. Zuhud is not living with less of what Allah has given us. For example, there is a story when Prophet ﷺ was giving his lecture, someone walked in wearing clothes that is so bad, not well managed. And so Prophet ﷺ asked that person, didn't Allah give you blessings? He said, yes, I have this and that. So Prophet said, show the blessings. Don't live like Allah has not given you anything. So zuhud is not, wearing like torn dress. We don't iron our shirt. That is zuhud. I still remember when I was in the school, there was a senior brother. He always come to school without ironing his shirt. And one day I asked him why, because he said, I'm zuhud, I'm having zuhud. So, oh no, I said, oh. So zuhud is not putting the world inside our heart, but rather put it in the hands and we decide according to what Allah instructs us. And number 3, the trial of knowledge, perspective as well, and also seeking wisdom behind events of life. It's about managing ego and managing control, because the more knowledge we have, what comes naturally is we think we have more control. We think we entitle for answers and whatnot. So the story teaches us humility and trusting Allah's decision. And finally, this story we don't have a specific session to discuss this story in this Muqtamar, but it is a story about power. The Dhul Qarnayn, there is so much discussion about who is this guy, Alexander the Great, this and that. Of course, we can tell this is a Muslim guy. The Prophet ﷺ has, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put his story in the Quran, and it doesn't matter. Even Dhul Qarnayn means the one who has 2 horns. So people try to figure out who is this guy. That is not the most important part of the story, but the important part of the story is how he had every power in his hands, but he ruled with justice and responsibility, and this is a story about ethical leadership. So let's go through every stories, and then we try to derive what are the main problem and the cure, and also what we can do in our modern times. The problem is disbelief is normalized. Things being when we are in an environment where everything is going against our faith, we can be desensitized, and it can be very difficult, and normalization or desensitization can lead to a deep problem. Truth is seen as strange. This is also aligned with the prophetic hadith when he said, "Bada'ul Islamu ghariban, sayaudu ghariban. Fatuba lil ghuraba, fatuba lil ghuraba, fatuba lil ghuraba." This religion began as a strange, alien-like belief, and people will find it so difficult to accept, and it will turn back into that same state. So basically, this story also suggests that we need to be prepared to be able to walk the path as a stranger, not being accepted by many and whatnot. Faith must justify itself. Innahum fityatun amanu bi rabbihim wa zidnahum huda. This story was anchored in this particular phrase where Allah said they were young people, they were not scholars, they were not leaders, they are believers like us who are under pressure, and Allah says that they expressed, they stood with their faith, وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased the guidance. So as if there is a golden rule, whenever we go to uncertainty, faith is the only way to get extra guidance. Allah will give guidance to the heart. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَيَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who strive to hold on to the faith, trying everything that they can to protect their faith, Allah will show pathways to their heart. And the cure in this particular story was they withdrew, not to escape responsibility. They already spoken to the king, they have made clear their stance, their faith, but they are being persecuted, so they withdrew and they went into a cave, but to protect their iman. When faith is threatened, distance can be worshipped. Hence, it is very important to reflect upon another hadith that Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi." Someone's faith is very dependent on who is his closest friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلُ. Therefore, be very careful and be very selective with whom you are closely attaching yourself. So same goes to in this context. You know, our kids go to school, we have neighbors and whatnot, colleagues. We can be friends with anyone, but we must be very particular in terms of the spiritual influence. If they have bad influence, then we have to be very particular to protect. And distance can be worship. Sometimes not befriending someone or coming out of a certain circle can be a worship, can be something that protects our iman. The heart. So the story begins with this story to suggest that the heart must be protected before anything or everything else. Because whatever test that coming later is based on that fundamental faith. And hence we can see the wealth, the knowledge and the power. So this story actually speaks to us in our modern challenges, modern life challenges. Muslim parents struggling to protect their children's faith. So we need to use this story, contemplate deeply to find how are the ways that we have nowadays to protect them. Youth navigate identity, sexuality and peer pressure. And as I said earlier, this age, the digital age that we are living in, has destroyed every walls and barriers. Either you are in Hafiz Islamic Tahfiz course, or you are in a public school, you are living in a Muslim majority country, your house is next to a masjid, or you are living in totally isolated Muslim society, digital exposure has broken every barrier. Anything can get to you from anywhere. So it's even more challenging in this time and age. Hence, trying to go deep into creating that cave, that protection is something that we need to take as a highest priority. So sometimes guidance means limiting access, creating spiritual caves, choosing intentional isolation, and withdrawal is not weakness, it's a strategic preservation. And number two, that's the first story. Number two, we are looking back into the story of the owner of two gardens. The problem in that story was not about he was rich. Being rich in Islam is commendable, is asked for, is encouraged, because even one of the most important pillars, not one, maybe two, zakah and also hajj, is tied to wealth. If you don't have enough wealth, you are not required, or you cannot apply the fundamental pillar of giving zakah. And also hajj. Hajj is also for those who are man istata'a minkum, whoever that has the means. So it suggests that we need to be someone who generate wealth, work, and every other responsibility. When you are married, you have family, it all comes with searching and finding wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praise someone who works to find wealth, and even give certain provision, certain leeway for those who are working so hard in business space, that they can have certain discounts. They don't have to pray long night prayers because they are busy traveling to build wealth for the sake of Allah. They can recite Quran, whichever that they can. They are not being subjected to difficult requirements. Forgetting seeing permanence in dunya. But the problem wasn't about the wealth, but measuring worth by wealth and assets, and seeing permanence in dunya. We went through the ayah when he starts to enjoy so much wealth, he thinks everything comes because of his work and his credit and his credential, and he started to say, "Ma adunnu an tabida hadhihi abada." I think this won't ever will perish. So this was the problem in that story, not of being rich, because we have trends among Muslims sometimes. We try to promote poverty, and we think this is, though yes, Prophet ﷺ chose to live among the poor and live, we can say that he chose to live with little means, though he was very rich actually, and he had the access to the wealth. He can just snap his finger and he can have millions in his disposal. But he chose. Even when we read later in Surah Al-Kahf, Prophet ﷺ will come to a point where he gives offers to his wife, Ummahatul Mu'minin, either to choose the worldly gains and luxurious life, or stay with him. But staying with him means you will go through a difficult life. But that does not suggest that Prophet was promoting poverty, but he is choosing that kind of life for him. And other Sahaba like Abu Bakr, Uthman, Abdul Rahman bin Auf, and many more millionaires was there, and they were rich, and they used the wealth to support and to build meaningful projects and expanded Islam and whatnot. So the cure was a reminder of transcends. Wealth is not evil, but certainly in wealth is, sorry, I misspelled that, I think. Dunya becomes dangerous when it defines success and identity. And remember, this whole story was about Iman versus materialism. That is the title of the book that I said, Abul Hassan Ali al-Nadwi. This morning I just searched. The PDF is available online. It is a 70s or 80s publication, so the font is not that good, but that clear. But the book is available online. You can download and read them. And the whole 4 stories, because what is fundamental in being materialistic? Being materialistic forces someone only to focus in this life and only to believe something that is material. If it is not materialized, means that hence people asking question, where is God? Because they cannot see God in terms of material presence. So they ask a lot of questions about barakah, for example. What is blessings? Because blessings is something that you cannot see or measure, even soul for that matter. So do not replace Allah with material. Success is the fundamental message from this portion of this story. And then these are some questions that we can ask ourselves to reflect. Is success bringing us closer to Allah or numbing ourselves? Sometimes when we went through certain phases of life with career and whatnot, we can recall that we used to pray with more khushu'. We cried even more when things were difficult or not this much of wealth was there. So sometimes we can ask ourselves, is this growth, this progress in life is actually bringing us even further from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We don't feel that anymore, because when we are vulnerable, we know we depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it is easier to cry, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for things, because we depend and rely solely upon Him. But when we already built certain things, stability, faith, a connection, we have certain amount of savings, certain amount of investment, sometimes the heart is get hardened and it doesn't scare as much. When things happen, don't worry, I have this, I have this. I don't put every eggs in one basket, I have backup plans, this and that. So we tend to rely easily on something else that makes us a bit further from Allah. Do we still say MashaAllah with sincerity? Yes, we do say MashaAllah all the time, but do we mean it? MashaAllah means like, this is because Allah wills it. This is from Allah. So that is something that we are being trained to always say and maintain. And sometimes people introduce us with certain credentials, call us with certain titles. When those kind of when we hear such thing, when we see certain achievement that we have achieved, we must say MashaAllah. And this is also being taught when we have some jealousy towards others who have blessings, also to say MashaAllah. Are our children inheriting Iman or only inheritance? This is also something, most of us, we will be thinking about to secure the future of our children. But normally what we regard as future is they must have place to stay, they must have certain amount of insurance so that they can survive during difficulties and that, this and that. But sometimes we forgot that inheriting Iman, though Iman can be inherited, right? We know Iman tidak dapat diwarisi. We cannot inherit Iman. And we have those kind of stories in the Quran as well. They are prophets, but their children are not with them. For example, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, for example. Even Prophet Lut, Allah says that his wife betrayed him. So being husband and wife also does not guarantee faith and inheriting Iman. But we must put effort. And in the story later, we can see in the stories that comes in Musa and Khidr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even protected the worldly needs of children, of an orphan, because the father was very particular in preserving his Iman. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. Hence Allah not only protected the Iman of the child, but also protected their worldly needs. Materialism does not announce itself, it whispers. So Surah Al-Kahf exposes the whisper. And if you remember, Allah repeats that وَهُوَ يُحَاوِرُهُ. Sometimes you are having conversation and you drop that small nuggets that I'm better than you, I have more than you, that kind of. So sometimes Shaitan has been in this industry for a very long time. We are newcomers, right? So Shaitan knows very well how to play Shaitan has experienced whispering to our father and mother in Jannah and making them sleep and fall. What more us here in this dunya and Shaitan? Sometimes we get deluded with the advice. Sometimes we cannot tell, is this Shaitan's advice or this is my thoughts? So that's how Surah Al-Kahf exposed the whispers. So this story highlights that the mistake was not the wealth, but forgetting Allah in prosperity. This is the silent test of Muslims' life. Sometimes we have halal income. That must be at first. If we are living with haram income, that's another whole discussion. Sometimes people think, oh, okay, it's okay, I have haram income, but I pay zakah. Zakah is paid for halal income, not for haram income. Haram income, even if you pay zakah, it does not purify that haram income. Sometimes people believe that zakah is purification, right? So I pay zakah, so everything will be purified. No, that's not what it means. It purifies the halal income, not purifying the haram income. Sometimes, as we mentioned earlier, career growth but spiritual decline. This is something also, it also can happen to those who teach Islam. Teacher who has learned more from degree to master, from master to PhD, but the title grew, but the ego also grew, and the spirituality declined. And we in this circle, friends and whatnot, sometimes we talk and share among each other. The struggle is real. The struggle is real. So it applies across the board. It doesn't exclude even those who studies Islam or even someone who teach and learn and teach Quran. It can affect everyone. And comfort replacing reliance. Again, I want to suggest reading that book, The Comfort Crisis. It's a very excellent book by Michael Easter. He explored and bring forth to us, to make us realize how much comfort that we are in, which is among the traps that make us forget about the blessings and the ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us in this life. So this is the third story. We have passed through two stories. These two stories, it began with the lecture and then story. It breaks, there is another lecture, and then it goes to second story, and then there is another lecture, and then this story begins. Later it will straight continue with the fourth story without lecture in between. So there is a wisdom why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in that way the structure. So in this story, as we have discussed this story last 2 nights ago, I think. So what Musa wants alayhi salam explanation. He regarded himself as the most knowledgeable, which he was right, because he was asked by Bani Israel, who is the most knowledgeable among us. Of course, Prophet Musa was the most knowledgeable, but Allah informed him that there is a person that has knowledge more than you, or the knowledge that you don't have. So that journey that he went through for a training, he demanded explanation. He doesn't see logic, and he wants immediate clarity for things that was happening. But Hijrah alayhi salam operates on trust, and then he was asking for patience as the fundamental requirement to follow through the modules, and also divine perspective. And that story begins with a statement, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُخِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. So imagine that is the statement that being told to every single one of us, that how you will be able to be patient when you have no full knowledge of things. So that put us humble, and we should have humility. Then we can go through certain phase of life without having the answer, and just trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the cure in this story was humility before Allah's unseen wisdom. All events, when we were going through that story, all events seems unjust until the wisdom was revealed. One after another, the curtain of the taqdir, of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was being revealed, and we started to see wisdom behind every event. And key lessons here in this story was not everything is meant to be understood before being trusted. Probably there are even things that we will die upon without understanding. What was the wisdom? I think children that experience genocide, they won't be able to understand what was the wisdom behind all that. But later, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that trust me, because knowledge without humility fractures the heart. I do get questions from Islamic studies students sometimes when they cannot reconcile. Allah is merciful, but why? What is mercy behind all of this? And they need explanation. They want explanation. So without humility, our faith and our heart will fracture or burst out. And this story also highlights our daily struggle, our unanswered du'as. When we speak about du'a, most of the du'as that we remember is those that hasn't been answered. We normally forget those du'a that has been answered. We always focus that this du'a hasn't been answered, that du'a hasn't been answered. Where is this du'a coming? I have placed the order and delivery is being delayed. I thought this is like Amazon, only 3 days maximum or refund. That kind of attitude has been developed even with du'a. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a lot of hadith explaining sabr when we make dua. For example, Prophet said that every dua is being accepted in 3 ways. First, you get exactly as per requested. Number 2, the dua is used to protect you from harm that was on your way. So sometimes we escape certain accidents, certain events. That was the dua was working for that reason. And finally, dua is not granted, is not used to protect, but is kept in the day of judgment until a servant will come and be surprised looking at huge amount of du'as that is being kept. So meaning every dua is accepted. It's just that you don't know which one get given in this world, which one is kept in the akhirah, which one was used to protect from harm. Hence, Umar al-Khattab has a famous saying that he don't bother about the answer of the dua. He bothers whether his heart feels want to make dua or not. Because the moment we feel like, sometimes we do feel this way, right? What's to us? Everything's okay, man. Or just, oh Allah, just like yesterday, just like last year, that hasn't been accepted yet. So please, I just replacing the order. So that is an attitude that basically destroys the relationship. And also, I do get this kind of comments. Sometimes people say, I stopped making dua. I see no point on it. I've been asking for many years. I see not a single sign of any goodness that's happening in my life. So that is also traps of shaitan. He plays with this angle, trial of knowledge, perspective, trust, and destroy someone's relationship with Allah. And then we have these very common things: delayed marriage, sometimes separation. People come and say, when I get married, I did my istikhara, so I get married. So that was my qadr, right? So why am I divorced now? What happened to... Do we have the answer? We don't have the answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. How can... Unless Allah sends a revelation and explain to you what happened. Otherwise, we don't know. We have to just trust Him and keep going. We don't know. Unexpected illness. This is something that I fear because I have a friend now suffering cancer stage 4. He was traveling around giving talks. He has small children, was active, and suddenly most of his days are now in chemotherapy and losing his hair. And it was completely unexpected. It just came suddenly and it happens. So it's easy to say when we are healthy now. Sometimes I imagine how it will feel when suddenly you are bedridden, income has cut off, no job, nothing, you have family, and you cannot do what you want to do, and you are on medications, and you are always sleeping because of the medication, of the impact of the medicines, So how will we find solace and wisdom behind unexpected illness? That's also very challenging. And children leaving the faith. I was talking to Brother Pachi Zabidi yesterday. I was reminded of a story. There was a scholar from US came to KL in Kuala Lumpur, and he shared this story. A father here in Dallas, I think in Texas, he bought a house in front of the masjid. He left his job. He just drove a cab so that he can have more time to help his children learn Quran, recite Quran, bring them every prayer to the masjid and everything. That he gave everything to that child until when the child when his son get to an adulthood, he decided to leave Islam altogether. And he get depressed, but he never stopped making dua. And then he passed away. After he passed away, this boy his son suddenly came back and searching for truth. And he re-embraced Islam, and he is now even far better than what his father expected of him. So there was something in the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but his father never get to see that, right? He was experiencing a pain that is so crushing that he put everything. Same goes to the story in the Musa and Khidr when the boy get killed. So we say that the death of a parent is expected, but for parents, the death of a child is not expected. It's so traumatic to go through. But Allah is telling through that story, if we let that boy grow older, he will become tughyanan wa kufra. That would be even more painful. So I'm accepting your dua by taking your child now, so that I protect you from even bigger pain that is coming in the future. So it's easy to say, but it's not something easy to experience. I have a friend when I was working in the bank, there was an older brother. Every office has this person that lights up the room, right? With the jokes, always smiling, always happy, and he lost his daughter. He turned opposite. He's always quiet. We can see his sadness, not for months, for years. 8 to 7 years I was there before I quit the bank. He entirely changed. He was going through that grief. So it's a very difficult thing. So all these trials, these 4 trials, is not small trials. It's huge, big trials that is being compared to Dajjal. Because Dajjal will come. Dajjala means it will confuse you. It will turn you around. And Dajjal also will come with materialistic offers. Whoever follows Dajjal will enjoy materialistic gain and comfort. Whoever chose first, before choosing, able to see clearly that this is Dajjal and restrain from following him, will go through hardship. So hope we will never meet Dajjal. Even Prophet thought that there is plenty of dua that we should recite, besides memorizing the 10 verses, the first and the final 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf. We are also being taught after every prayer to recite certain amount of dua that is available in Hisnul Muslim, that seek protection from Dajjal, because that is the biggest trial. And finally, the things that we experience nowadays every single day, injustices we cannot explain, especially to children, right? My kids sometimes ask, Allah is Al-Jabbar, Al-Qahhar. So in Qunut Nazila, people say, Ya Allah, ara'ina ajaiba qudrati. Ya Allah, show us the might power of your kingdom but nothing happens. So children ask questions. So how to explain to that situation, injustice? Sometimes accident happens not because of our fault. Someone else was texting and driving, hit us, and we became disabled. How to explain that? Before I had this tendency to text and drive, until I watched a video. There is a video in YouTube. interviews made by those who are being disabled because someone else was text and driving and hit them. That person is okay, they are still intact, everything's, but those who are, it completely doesn't make sense, but that's some of the challenges that we need to understand through this story. So Surah Al-Kahf teaches that not everything painful is punishment, which is difficult to digest. Not everything unclear is meaningless. Faith sometimes means trusting before understanding. And the final story in this surah that we had not discussed in depth, but this story is very interesting and probably one of the most difficult one in this series of 4 stories in Surah Al-Kahf. Dhul-Qarnayn has authority, has resources, has influence, but he maintained his humility by always saying, "Hada rahmatun min Rabbi." Hada rahmatun min Rabbi. This is a mercy from my Lord. He even constructed a mega structure that is still standing to this day, and he attributed that success to Allah, not to himself. So that is very difficult sometimes not to take credit and feel haughty about it. So the cure, he does not exploit. He had all the means to exploit his people. The one he met here, the one that he met there. He can exploit them because they were poor, they were uneducated. The story has some nuance and details in its episodes. And he also does not use his power to seek legacy or to make himself permanent. ما تظن أن تبيد هذه أبدا. He doesn't do anything that send an impression that he wants to be permanent. It's interesting because Allah put the story of Adam and Iblis in the middle of this surah, because you still remember what Iblis said to Adam, convincing him to eat from the fruit? He was promising Adam that you will stay here forever, permanency. So we are designed with wants and inclination. We want good things to be permanent. It's just fact. And while this world, we are being reminded again and again in this surah, after the second surah, the garden surah, story, we will have a short lecture Allah will give about the temporary nature of this life. So it's again going to tackle the inclination and the wants to be permanent. And power anchored to accountability. In Arabic, leadership is mas'uliyah. Comes from the root word sa'ala, which means to be questioned. So in our term, in our mind, whenever we talk about power and responsibility, we have immediately in front of our eyes the word sa'ala, which means you will be questioned. Either in marriage, either in the office, in the community. Leadership is accountability, is to be questioned. The strongest people are those most aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Power must submit to ethics. And in these days, in our common life, it can be looked into professional influence, financial leverage, fame. Fame is also, people back then, just 30, 40 years back, it's very difficult to become famous. You need to be really doing something highly valuable and you can be really famous. But these days, everybody can get famous. Not only by doing highly valuable things, but also by doing crazy things. And we have this tendency with the design that is being made with all these platforms that get us famous to make us drawn in the wants of getting views and be seen and be validated, and this is very dangerous. This is also a sort of power. Power is not just political power. Fame is also power. Even there is an Indonesian scholar, he was a da'i and a scholar, also was the Prime Minister of Indonesia. He was the 5th Prime Minister of Indonesia. His name is Muhammad Nasir. If you read some history, he is the one who made Indonesia today. Otherwise, Indonesia could have broken up into islands. So this guy, Sheikh Muhammad Natsir, has a saying in his book Fiqh Da'wah. He says that he was advising those who are calling people to Allah. He said that for da'is, the biggest test is not wealth. The biggest test is fame, because fame and influence is more powerful than having money. Hence, when people get very rich, they get bored, right? When they get bored, they buy politicians. They do things to get known and whatnot. So power is always more alluring than just having money or just having resources. Fame and social platforms, leadership in corporate world, masjids and organization. And when we talked this morning while having breakfast with Imam Shamsi Ali, he works closely with Zohran Mamdani and whatnot. We talked about this, leadership influence, compromises, how to bring change. It's a huge challenge, and this surah, Dhul Qarnayn, should be studied by anyone who wants to hold power and searching for public office position and whatnot. This story reminds us that power is a trust, leadership is accountability, influence must build barriers against harm and not monuments to ego. And we have another 4 minutes. So in comparison, Surah Al-Kahf teaches fitnah does not come in one form. It comes as a pressure on belief, seduction of comfort, arrogance of intellect, corruption of authority, and the cure and how the heart survives is through protected iman, detached dunya, humble knowledge, and accountable power. So Ashabul Kahf teaches us when to step back. This is very important. We discussed this in depth when we talked about when to retreat and how to protect ourselves, our spirituality. The Gardens teaches us the meaning of success. Musa and Khidr teaches us when to surrender understanding. Dhul Qarnayn teaches us when to carry responsibility. And this is the only one dua that is being cited in the whole surah, which the surah begins with this dua. The story of Ashabul Kahf, it has 2 parts to it. The first part is the trailer of that story. In that trailer, this dua is being mentioned. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah wa hayyi lana min amrina rashada. Our Lord, grant us mercy from yourself, min ladunka, because the story of Musa and Khidr discusses about the knowledge that straight come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, straight to the heart of Khidr alayhi salam, because Allah was opening certain secrets. So we are calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His special mercy. Grant us mercy and guide us rightly in our affairs. So this surah does not remove darkness from the world. We can stop complaining about the world is so bad. Yeah, it's going to be bad. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We are being created to go through difficulties and darkness. That's just how it's been designed. So this surah will help us where it places light in the heart so that we can walk through the darkness. Okay, see you inshallah next time. So we can have some question and answer, maybe some exchanges. And I recommend you, I bring this book as well with me. You can find this book. This book is probably the simplest one in this theme. Lessons from Surah Al-Kahf, written by Dr. Yasir Qadi. It has a very easy to understand explanation. Though this is not in depth, you can start with this and then we can go reading more in depth and more elaborative work in this subject, inshallah. Thank you very much. Title is Lessons from Surah Al-Kahf. Lessons from Surah Al-Kahf.
Yasir Qadi? Yeah. I'll put it on my iPad.
Jazakallah khairan kathira. Our esteemed brother Ustaz Azlan Harizman for his insight. I know Surah Al-Kahf is something that a topic that we actually could not, we probably will take like multiple months to understand the whole thematic version of the 4 stories and the lesson learned. But this is just kind of like the summary and synthesis of all the stories in Surah Al-Kahf. With that, inshallah, we have a good 10 minutes. I would like to potentially solicit, maybe first we'll take a couple of questions first. Maybe if one from the brother and then one from the sister. And then if we have time, we'll take the third question, being mindful of the time that the next session is going to start at 10 o'clock. So, anybody from the brothers who are having any, have a question? Anybody from the brothers? Maybe sister.
Alright. Jazakallah, Ustad, for the wonderful lessons for the past few days. It's been really comforting. My question is regarding comfort, actually, and making dua. Sometimes when you said everything is okay, you don't know what to ask, or sometimes you continue making the same dua and it starts to feel very automated or repetitive. My question is, what do you recommend for someone who makes those dua, but they want to make it more genuine and find that tailored dua to make it feel more khushu?
That's a very good question. Yeah, of course, we can run out of ideas to ask, how to ask. So Prophet ﷺ has taught us so many du'as that when we don't know how to ask and what to ask, we actually can lean on what Prophet ﷺ asked and how he asked them. So we can have the book that has compiled certain du'as like Hisnul Muslim, or even we can search for books that compile the Quranic du'as. And I recommend you guys to download these apps. Dhikr. Where's my phone? I'm so disconnected. I didn't remember where's my phone. So you can look into apps, Google or Play Store, Dhikr and Dua, DHIKR and Dua. It has a very beautiful layout and compilation of many du'as that is being taught in the Quran and in authentic hadith. So sometimes when you just run out of ideas what to ask, just look into that apps and it will stimulate certain part of our mind that we never thought of asking that thing. We never considered that this is also something that we need to ask Allah for. There is even interesting du'as that I found that in that compilation that, Ya Allah, protect me from a friend when he sees me doing wrong, he stays silent. He let me continue doing the wrong act. I was like, oh, that's so deep. I would expect to have a friend who will just stay silent and make me happy. And there is also a dua narrated sahih in that compilation that protect me from a spouse that makes my hair turn grey. That doesn't suggest anything about my wife, yeah? But it's that very deep. It shows that the nuance, the depth of those du'as. So I recommend first we learn from the du'as as well. Number 2, if Arabic is very difficult to feel connection, make dua in whatever language that we can. That is very helpful. Sometimes repetitive dua when we recite them in a language that does not connect to our emotions, it feels empty and dry. So it doesn't, sometimes even we are praying behind an imam is crying so hard. We are crying because I don't understand what's going on. So learning and trying, if we cannot memorize that, then we make that dua in the language that we can. Because dua is not only asking for things, dua is communicating. It's speaking, it's telling Allah what we feel and whatnot. I hope that answers the question.
Any more questions?
Jazakallah khair for the opportunity. There are some people, there is common questions. I think. I'm sorry. Yesterday I didn't attend until the last. When somebody experiences boredom, so it is easy for them just to get away from the boredom, just to check the phone, because it is everything is available now. So I think it is quite challenging for them just to go to make dua when the boredom comes. So what's the tips for that? Yes,
I think that's a very natural process that we go through. There is a good story behind this question or this concern. The story of Hamdallah, the Prophet's companion Hamdallah, who is very excited when he is in the session with the Prophet. He feels motivated, rejuvenated. But when he goes home, gets to his chores, his family, his work, he will feel bored. He will feel like down. So one day he went to Abu Bakr and said that Nafaqa Hamdallah. Hamdallah has become munafiq. Because when I was with the Prophet ﷺ, my motivation is this high, like attending Mu'tamar and listening to Imam honors and whatnot. So, and then when I go back, it's just go down. So Abu Bakr was worried. If you are saying that as having nafaqa, then I do experience the same. So they both went to Prophet ﷺ and told Prophet ﷺ, we go through this up and downs and we have these boredom moments that we are not that driven to do whatever. Or he even said that when I sit with you, your Prophet, oh Prophet Allah, I can see Jannah, as if I can see Jannah, as if I can see Jahannam. I get scared, I get motivated, but when I'm busy with something else, it's just that. The Prophet smiled and he said, As-sa'a, as-sa'a, everybody goes through this. There are moments of highs, there are moments of lows. If you guys are always on the highs, the angels will make a line and shake your hands along the roads, meaning that that's very angelic to be hit if we don't go through the moments of up and downs. So first we must admit that is normal. That is normal. Hence we have every day, every week, a day that has a special rituals like Jummah. In the whole year we have Ramadan. That is like to give us some festival, some boost. And I think one of the most scariest reminder that we will get after during Ramadan is to maintain the Ramadan level after Ramadan. That is almost impossible. How can we expect that? That's very difficult. That's very difficult. Hence, even in Ramadan itself, we have last 10 nights. In that last 10 nights, we have one night. So, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed human being that we need that seasons. Our life are seasons. We have good seasons, we have down season and whatnot. So, it's just a process. But there is another hadith that suggests وَلِكُلِّ عَمَلٍ شَرَّةٍ وَلِكُلِّ شَرَّةٍ فَطْرَةٍ. Every good deed has its high peaks, it has its lows. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ فَطْرَتُهُ عَلَى سُنَّتِي. Whenever he gets bored or on the downside, still hold on to the basics of Sunnah, he will succeed. But if someone who is going through that downfall decide to depart from his Sunnah, for example, leaving prayers, going away from the very basic fundamental obligation, فَقَدْ halak, he will be destroyed. So again, we mentioned earlier when the story of two gardens, friends is very important for us to go through that up and downs. Because when the friend of ours is on the peak, we might be at the low. So he will be lifting us up, and the wheel will move. He will get down, and we will be going up, and we will be lifting him up. So that's how we live in a community, support each other. And I think every year we have Mu'tamar. Mu'tamar is like a Ramadan boost. We listen to probably the most amount of lectures in our life in Mu'tamar. So we got boosted, and then we continue our journey up and downs until the next Mu'tamar. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan katsira, Ustaz Islam, for answering the question. So we are actually on the dot at 10 o'clock right now. So I would like to, inshallah, close this session with recitation of let's take a farah, then Surah Al-Asr. Subhanallahumma wa bihamdika. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Al-Asr innal insana lafi khusr. Okay, the next session in this room will be by Ustad Ahmad Anas Khashidi. The title is Beyond the Algorithm, the Heart in Islamic Learning. Will be actually right now. So I welcome everybody.
All right, we'll give it another 2 minutes to let latecomers trickle in, inshallah.
Ibu days. Ibu they're all over.
Yeah,
All the brothers.
Jews or doing their thing. And the kids are doing their thing too.
Yeah, we're doing our thing as well. Inshallah. And babysitting day. Ibu day and babysitting day. Inshallah.
Okay. Not that I want to force anybody, but if you can, please, since there's not too many people, let's move up to the front rows. As far forward as you're comfortable. Thank you. Start? All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. My name is Tahir Albar. I'm your moderator for today. Thank you for attending. Today is big population is there in Yamun Nisa, right? The Ibus, the ladies, sisters, and then a bunch of all the younger ones are on field trips. Alhamdulillah, everybody doing their own thing. So now we have, inshallah, the Bapa and maybe a mix of young adults as well to cover this topic. And this topic that we have is titled Beyond the Algorithm, the Heart in Islamic Learning. Is going to be presented by Ustad Ahmad Anas Khashidi. That's the saw. Okay, not a shin. All right. Indonesian saw. All right. Okay, Ahmad Anas Khashidi. Okay, if you guys probably gathered, I met him before. He's in LA. I met Houston a long time ago before he even graduated from. I'll give this background shortly. I've known him and he helped out there in Istiqlal. So we don't meet often, but we know each other, inshallah. All right, so to officially open, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما. May Allah increase our knowledge by attending this lecture and